Okay, remember that they're changing my voice and they're filming me heavily because they don't want you to hear African masculinity in my voice. They don't want you to hear God's grace in my voice. Universal Marshall Code, point 12. Marshall is marital scrambled. The word marshall is the word marital, as in marriage, scrambled. And this shows us that even the ignoble scribes who made the wordplay knew that if a female is not romantic, pure, and just, then she is a little girl that never grew up, and a slut. The reason why I went as far as to call her a slut as well has to do with the fact that if you're not a virtuous woman, what are you? What are you doing with your time? You're either one or the other on a spectrum, right? There's a line somewhere, there's a fence. So, you see that countless women have rejected me in my life. And they didn't just reject me, for a shallow reason. They looked at me and they said, that's a righteous person who's less than rich, who's from a marginalized race in society. And they almost certainly saw that I was more righteous than other people. There's a difference between pretty and fun and handsome and righteous. And I was just so appalled as I asked people what they thought as I compared my pictures, and many people agree with me that that's what happened. That they rejected righteousness and greatness for mere conformity, for pretty boys, for their racist philosophies, etc. That's why it's a universal martial code. That's why God made morals universal. Because, it's stupid to be specific racial or traditional. It's stupid to not be universally fair. So as I'm mulatto, right? I'm black and white. I'm not black. I'm not white. I was engaged to a female who's part Italian, part Greek. White looking, white. Okay, my mother's white. My father's black. I'm different from other people. My father is from Nigeria, came here penniless and worked his way up. I'm not from a long line of privileged people, from a long line of royal martial art warriors, but not privileged people who colonize people. And when you can't make those distinctions, when you can't look at the most righteous person ever possible and say, wow, if you're a female, wow, that you want to date him, there's something seriously wrong with you and your culture and the way you think. How could you put your mere emotions before principle? When you look around and you see all kinds of females who regret dating, there's a 50% divorce rate. Okay, they regret dating lots of guys that they dated in the past. How could you not give the most righteous guy a fair chance? And that's because they're following those colonial orders. They're specific religious orders. They're political orders. They're cultural orders. They're economic and social orders. Instead of a moral order, a universal, pinpointed moral order. And who hones righteousness better than the top martial artists ever? And who can be righteous while cheating me out of my right to lead? They can do something that seems more decent than something else, that seems more good than something else. But they can't be righteous on God's earth, okay, without obeying God through me. So we see that's a universal principle that transcends whether you're monotheistic or not. Because again, as I pointed out, I believe already in a previous point, that if you don't believe in God, you believe that morals have a source, right? You believe in time, more or less, or you're like crazy. If you don't believe that time has some truth to it at least, you're basically nuts. What do you think's happening when you get older, right? So you have to go by the logical conclusion with what you have. In a sense, scientifically speaking, you don't know anything is true. But you have to start somewhere and build on it. And that is the logical conclusion. And the logical conclusion is that there's a source for morality. If you think of morality as having a start that is timeless in a sense, right? It must be God. Because what came first, right? Where does morality come from? It comes from a place that's within God's being. But if you don't believe in God, you have to still believe in that place, because what is the logical conclusion about where it comes from? And there's no easy way to say what the wise man pictures in his mind when I'm saying this. But that place is a sacred place, and it has to do with God. And there's a bunch of evil, perverted people who have been perverting things to the best of their ability, leaving no stone unturned. They want you to be confused about that, so that you date the wrong person. They use a ruse, falsehood, a ruse, to use, confuse, and abuse. So Marshall is marital scramble because it's not a scientist order. In reality, it's not God's order. It's not a religious order without the martial law order. It's not an atheist or agnostic. It's not a government order. It's not a Democrat, conservative, or Republican or libertarian. It is a moral martial art order. Because honing moral intensity and proving it and becoming the logical conclusion fair and square as to where morality enters the world. Okay? Spirit. Proving that spirit of morality proves that order. And you live in a kind of Anglosphere, right? An English-influenced colonial state in America, for example. The whole West is. A kind of Judeo-Anglo-Western, region and regions. And they believe in a kind of, what's called maritime admiralty law in terms of what it's referring to, what the wordplay is referring to, not the technical kind of legal or historical idea. And they want you to admire, right? The admiral, right? A position in the Navy, for example, the admiral, right? They want you to admire people relative to their craft, which has to do with officers and Boy Scouts and the military and some chefs and the police and Freemasons, right? That kind of uniformity. That's not God. Okay, I don't want to offend anybody here, but their own Bible says that's not God, but the opposite of God. Okay? That's the reality of that situation. That's what it means to conform to the world. How could that be transcending the world when that's the government of the world? That's the military that enforces the government's rules, not God's rules. That's the police that enforces. And then you have these people who pretend that God is guiding America. Crazy as hell. That's insane. Think God was guiding Donald Trump when he was the president? You think God is guiding Joe Biden? Then why with this massive economy won't they house and feed the poor? I mean, there's so many reasons that's clearly not the case. So Marshall is marital scrambled and they're not referring to martial law of the state. That's preposterous. They're not referring to any allowed martial arts system. I'm fumed and poisoned and kept from martial arts. And my religion is universal, pinpointed moral precision, and if people gave me a rightful place, crime would drop, people would be fed, people would be housed, the poor people would be fed and housed. You see what I'm saying? So martial is marital scrambled, and the word martial is like the word mature and martyr for a reason. Because when you're mature enough to say this is what's right, not the government, not that controlled opposition, not those other martial arts systems, but this universal pinpointed moral precision. Okay, you piss off a lot of people, right? And they have various relationships with each other like groups in politics. Okay? When they have vested interests with something, these ruthless and rapacious monsters get together and persecute people. One of the most common forms these days is called gang stalking. Even saying that is like a revolutionary act. Saying that in a martial code is like a revolutionary act that is beyond secular revolutions. It's a sacred revolutionary act that transcends merely trying to, help a people rise in the planet. It's a spiritual revolution that transcends everything every revolutionary you've ever heard of was trying to do. So you see, the martial is marital scrambled, and this shows us that even the ignoble scribes who made the wordplay knew that if a female is not romantic, pure, and just, if she's not just enough to obey God through me, okay, this has to be said. This is what's best for everyone, including women. They need to accept this reality and snap out of denial. If that is the case, then she is just a little girl that never grew up in a slut. Now, what does that mean for consent? Consent. It's not true sense. It's consent that they're looking at legally. The con man who gives the empowered female a certain sense of confidence, a false sense of security, so she spreads her legs for a fucking dog and marries a scoundrel. That's sick. That's why Marshall is marital scrambled, not English frat, not science, not government. That's why I am the master of life, including marriage. I hold the keys to what's a valid marriage and what's not, no matter how much mind control and all this stuff they've been trying to do. I still hold the keys. They don't. They just allow you to have a satanic dog, quote unquote, wedding where you breed, which is B-red scrambled. And that is blasphemy when they have a marriage that I don't approve of. And a priest I don't approve of, or a preacher marrying those people. That is disgusting. And you all know it. And you all know it should be said. Okay, believe it or not, members of the government complain about that video and they harass me and make it hard for me to express myself. But we all know that I'm right. Countless kids are getting raped. People are being abused. They even have the nerve to persecute me. It's more than fair for me to make this video and to say it that way. If you think it's not fair, put in the comments, make your case. I'll give you 48 hours.